Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. And today I want to talk a little bit about rocks. I have a customer who's a long-term customer who recently got the new release from GW for The Hobbit, which has the Goblin Town, and he wants me to make a cliff face, basically, to run the perimeter on the outside of Goblin Town to represent the cave in which it's encapsulated. And this is another application of rocks that presents a unique challenge. In previous pieces, what I've done is to plaster rocks, so I cast them in soft latex molds, lay them onto foam. Sometimes in the castle that I recently completed, I carved that and then applied Sculptamold. And in other instances, I've used different, sort of scoring techniques on rocks to make a rough texture in foam. And I really felt like I wanted to create something that improves the realism, but it remains lightweight and relatively feasible. Doing, say, 12 linear feet of, cast rocks out of plaster is going to be ridiculously heavy, very time consuming. There's a lot of stitching that needs to be done with that, where you try to put the two casts together and then fill in the gaps with Sculptamold, things like that. And sorry if I'm talking over any of my new subscribers. There are some videos in the back that talk about Sculptamold and the different ways I've done some of these rock techniques, so you can go back into the library to see those. But I wanted to do something different for this one, and there's just so many different ways to do rocks, and I figured I'd go to the sort of foundation of this kind of terrain making, which are really railroad hobbyists, and look to see maybe if I could find a tip there. Looking there into that world, if you will, I found a technique, a tutorial, if you will, from a gentleman who had posted a couple of videos on his blog, and I'm going to link to that video in the description down below. Using that video, I was able to create this piece, which has a lot of promise, a few things I'd like to improve on it, but it has given me the confidence to kind of go forward with this technique. But I wanted to show the mock-up that I've done to the customer, get his approval on it, and explain a little bit about how it's done to you, the viewers. And I'm not going to be doing a tutorial, because the video actually does the tutorial just fine on its own, so really that's what you should be looking at. But I will give a brief description of how I've achieved this effect, and some thoughts I have for it going forward from there. So let's take a closer look at this piece and I can show you what I mean. So basically what I've done is I've taken 2 sheets of 1.5 inch foam. I glued them together as I wanted to give myself a little depth for carving. I wasn't really sure how deep I'd be going into the foam. And it also gave me 2 sides to practice on. This was my first practice, and you can see the effect is quite a bit different, and I realized I was doing several things wrong with this and really wasn't liking this at all. So after setting it aside for a couple days and thinking about it, looking at the video again and again, I realized what I was doing wrong. So this effect is basically achieved, maybe I should start there, by basically having a few tools on hand. He uses slightly different variants of this, but you get the idea. A long, sharp blade. I'm using this as a stronger stiffing blade that I can chip away with. And then using a really beat up stiff bristled brush that you cut the bristles down to make a stipple brush to texture the surface of the foam. So basically, in the simplest sense, you make incisions in the foam, cut, 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 cut. You make slices, cut, cut, cut. Then you cut underneath that, chip that out. Chip away at the surfaces, chip, 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 to make rough texture on it. And with a careful eye to geology, you create a surface that ends up looking a bit like a fractured slate cliff or something along that, as it really creates this very nice planar effect in the rocks where there's a lot of stratification. You can open up deep fissures, and then, you know, it's up to you on how to paint it. And the paint scheme that you see here is not going to be the final color scheme. I just practiced with a couple colors just to see how it came out. I think the highlights are a little too bright. I think it's a little bit off, but I'll work on that for the future. We're really looking at texture here. So, this is not as time-consuming as I thought it would be, but it's not lickety-split either. You know, my goal was to create something that would be relatively quick to do, and this is not quick, but it's not overly onerous. You know, of course, for a very large project, it will still take some time, but the effect, I feel, is really pretty nice. So let's talk about things that are potential problems with this. Actually, before that, let's see if I can show you exactly what kind of effects you can achieve. So, you know, you can see here the stippling action with the stiff brush, and that's explained in the video, is a very nice texture on the rock, and it gives it a little bit of a pebbly surface that picks up, you know, paint really well and makes it look a little bit more natural, and is relatively easy to do. You just jab that brush on there as hard as you can over and over and over. So that's pretty nice. The other thing that I was a little concerned about, but upon painting really works, is some of these torn out sections. You know, I felt like with the sheer surfaces and then these torn up areas that it wouldn't look quite right, but it really does have a nice effect, and you get the sense that, you know, rocks are fracturing from weathering and then falling out. You know, sheets of slate are falling away from this, and you get this uneven surface underneath. I like that. Works really, really well. The things that I feel like don't work are areas where I did not carve. Now, the sealed surface of the foam, you can see that area here. You can see it a little bit here. Coming down, see how that jumps out right there? Hopefully it jumps out to you. It does to me. You can see another patch here. The original surface of the foam is almost sealed, and so it doesn't take paint the same way, and it has a little bit of a smoother texture even after stippling than the rest of the surface of the rocks. Now, a few small patches here and there aren't going to stand out, but you really can't leave big open areas like this remaining. So in future versions of this, I will be cleaning this out more and bringing that back a little bit more to eliminate that. The other thing that I noticed even more when I painted it, and I had a friend look at this and he thought he liked it, so maybe it's all a matter of perspective, but you can see some of the sawing marks from the knife in some areas, and in some areas it's more prominent, you know, like right here, and in some areas you can see it like in here. Now, like this looks not too bad, that looks fairly natural, but some of these areas, like right here, to me, it kind of jumps out, right here especially. That, I don't know, it's something that I didn't anticipate and showed up more once I finally did the dry brushing on it. So I'll be working when I do the carving to try to control that and reduce that effect to some degree, although in some areas it's not a bad effect and it kind of adds to its texture. So that's perhaps a more matter of taste rather than a real problem. But you can, so where does this go for the future version? Let me pull back a little bit. Oh, all right, I'm jumping around here. You know, this is unscripted. This is just me. The other thought is finishing the top of it. And so what I did here is, because this is going to be single-sided, so the back will just be flat, you know, painted black, that, you know, how does this finish at the top? So what I did is I just put in a couple fissures, and I tried to make it a little bit irregular, and that seemed to work out okay. That was a major concern of mine, how to make this look natural at the top, and I think that works out pretty well. So the biggest problem I see going forward with this is how to create a somewhat modular piece. Now, the customer has not requested it be modular, meaning that, you know, it doesn't have to be something you can break down and rearrange, but it'd be nice to have that flexibility where you could take smaller pieces, put them together, have a small outcropping on the table, maybe up against the edge, and then when you want to encapsulate the entire town. But creating some kind of a join at these edges is going to be a little bit of a trick that will meld relatively easy on the eye. It will never be perfect. So I'm going to think a little bit about that and might come up with a template or two to help guide that union just so it doesn't look too jarring. But by modeling some deep fissures along the way, and thinking about it right now, perhaps modeling a cut edge so it slants, and then having the other piece, whoa, lights, and having the other piece cut at a slant that melds to that, then that could be cut as a fissure and would match up with some of the other fissures in the rock face, and that might hide it pretty well. So that's probably, at least off the top of my head, the way I'm going to try to go about it. And then to finish off the piece, what I'd like to do is base it on a short base, probably a little hardboard base, maybe 3 inches, just to give it a little tipping stability. And then, probably build a little bit of a talus slope here, and then just clutter that with some chipped plaster, which will also add some weight, add some ballast to it, and will reflect some of the chipping slate coming off. And the chips will probably be something similar to the mesa, which I just showed in a previous video. So you get that sharp edges and more plainer look to the talus at the bottom. But I thought, this is a new technique. I thought you might find it interesting. Stepping back, certainly, with this pulled back view, I really think that produces a very nice look. And this is my, my first real go at it. So it's only going to get better as I work with the material more and this new technique. And that's really a tip for you, is that your first attempt is never perfect. Your first attempt is definitely not perfect, so you got to go back in and look again at what people are doing and think, how am I doing it differently and what do I need to fix to get a better effect the second or the third time. So hopefully you found that a quick look inspirational as well as informative. Do take a look at the video that I will link in the description to actually see how this technique is achieved, and feel free to watch it 5 or 6 times like I did. And this is also an opportunity to the community to have some feedback and thoughts on this technique, this mock-up piece, and ideas you may have for improving it. I'm always open to suggestions, and I really appreciate a lot of the feedback that I get. And I won't be actually starting the finished piece probably for a couple days. I have to go out and get the foam and do the initial cuts and all of that, so there's some time for some comments to come in. So I appreciate your feedback, and most importantly, taking the time to watch the video. Thank you once again, and keep your eye on the channel. I have another work in progress video coming up right after this one.